And next up, we will have Pastor Conrad Adigwe, who will be speaking to us on understanding pipeline management in the church spiritual ministry context. Pastor Adigwe is the founder and CEO of Sophia ERP, one of the conveners of today's session. The developers of Nigeria's first indigenous ERP, that's Enterprise Resource Planning Business Solution, deployed beyond Africa in the UK, USA, UAE, Canada, and Australia. He's also the Director of Innovation and Digital Transformation at Techify UK, where he currently drives digital strategy and new technology across key industries in the region. He Gaining deep technical and industry experience as head business automation from KPMG in Nigeria. He was, for almost a decade, the program director for Empretech Nigeria, a UN private initiative for entrepreneurship development, as the technical implementation lead on behalf of Stanbic IBTC. He delivered the federal government local support content fund solution. He's a speaker and has spoken at several local international conferences as well. He's married to Dr. Amanda Adigwe, and they are blessed with 3 children. Pastor Conrad, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Okay, thank you everyone. I really want to appreciate everyone for being here, particularly the leaders, the heads of ministries who have made this program a priority. I want to appreciate everyone for being here. It's not easy to leave your weekend events, and join this sort of program. I want to thank everyone for coming, and I know that this edition will be an amazing one for everyone by the grace of God. Okay, so today we are going to be diving deep into a very important subject matter, and the reason is because over time we've seen that a lot of churches don't understand the pipeline really, and don't understand how to maximize the potential of the pipeline. And for those who understand how to maximize the potential, don't have the tools to maximize what the pipeline offers. So we're going to be looking at what is the pipeline, what are the issues, what are the challenges, how can we leverage technology. I mean, if you're a tech-driven ministry, you need to understand the advantage technology brings, to your church, to your entire administration, and to your operations. We thank God for the ministry of the Holy Spirit, which of course is the head of the church, governing what we do in the church. But we also know that there are gifts of administration, because God is not the author of confusion. The Bible says that everything be done decently and in order. If you look at the creation of God, you see that God is a very strategic God. He's a very systematic God, and he does things systematically, and he does things according to with processes, if I'll put it that way. Therefore, the church of God cannot be any different. And that's why it's important for us to understand what the pipeline is. What can we do within the different pipeline that we have currently in our churches? I'm privileged here today to take us through on that journey, and I'm hoping that we will be able to find our place. We will be able to understand all the things that are within our disposal that we can superimpose into our existing processes to accelerate our growth mandate. The first thing I want to say, which is one of the ideology powering what we're doing, is that the church is the highest access, or has the highest access to true wisdom, therefore must take its place on the world stage driving innovation. We have the wisdom of God, we have the power of God, and that combination has to deliver excellent results, has to deliver sleeker automation across our church systems. But however, we find in many places churches are still run in a manual way, churches are still archaic, and for some reason, it seems like some churches are comfortable with that status quo. But in their offices are run with technology and are run seamlessly, efficiently, and all that. But when it comes to church, we can do it anyhow, or we can, do it later, or we can just, not bother ourselves with it. We want to drive, change the narrative, or drive the thinking behind changing this narrative about how we superimpose technology or bring in technology to drive what we're doing in the church. Okay, so the first thing I want to define here as we begin to unravel the meaning of a church pipeline. What is a church pipeline? It means a lot to different churches. Thank you, Pastor Nee, from the Elevation Church, for that amazing presentation. Honestly, listening to you makes my heart, just tug, and I just say to myself, thank God for this event, because this is the reason why we're having this, so we can have the opportunity to listen to all the wisdom in the house, and how can we accelerate growth, gleaning on each other's understanding. So the church pipeline really is a strategic process of attracting, integrating, developing, and empowering individuals, mark that word, individuals, within the community of a church, as well as positioning them for leadership roles. Now, I've seen in some churches where people are just like a number. They are just like statistics. They're just like WhatsApp number. They're just like, what do you call it now? They're just like, they don't treat them like beings, like individuals, because they don't really drill down into the depth of what growth should deliver in the lives of these people. In many assemblies, you find a surge or a desire for increasing the number of members within the church. You find a lot of drive towards outreach, to bring people in. But then you realize that the people in-house are not even being looked after. The people in-house are being neglected, or not enough attention is being paid to the people in-house to grow them, to groom them, to help them develop their fullest potential. So every church has different pipelines. Like I said earlier in the meeting, we have the pipeline for souls who are coming to the church, those who are giving their lives to Christ. There's a pipeline for how we bring them in. What do we do with them? What do we say to them? How do we bring them into the converts class? How do we make them members of the church? How do we make them part of the workforce and drive them into the ministry? We also have the pathway from where, people just come into church, they saw, your program somewhere, or somebody invites them and they just come as guests. They're already existing believers. Some of them come from other ministries, highly powered. How do you funnel them into your ministry? How do you take the best? How do you get the best out of them? How do you even spot them? How do you recognize what they carry? How do you leverage on, the grace over their life, right? We also have different pipelines for leaders, right? So you have people within the leadership bracket. How do you accelerate their growth? How do you ensure they are really growing? Not just being committed to church or being consistent at their workplace, at their duty post. How are you sure they are really growing? How do you track these metrics? What do you have to see what is going on? If somebody comes into church 10 years ago and has spent 10 years, are you happy to see the person on the same level? Is there a program, right, by the church? Is there a system, a deliberate growth strategy that the church has put down, has laid down to say, you know what, if you come to our church and you spend 5 years, if you are responsive to everything that we're doing in church, you should attain this level. You should be operating at this level. Do we have that strategic roadmap to growth? Now, if we don't have that, then we're missing a lot. For those that have that, how are you tracking? Okay, so the church pipeline involves also creating the structured path for people to grow spiritually, and for you to skill them up, and for you to ensure that you can grow your leadership pipeline, and you have people over time who can work with you as a senior pastor or as an overseer, to drive the vision and the mission of your ministry. Now, the screen before me generally shows you what you call the membership journey. Now, if you look at this, someone comes in as a visitor, 2010, and then it takes him 5 years to become a member. So he's just hovering around, not really a member, but nobody's taking notes, one. Nobody is attending to that person, two. Nobody is asking questions. So that person is randomly just hovering around, and that person may likely fall through the cracks if there's no system literally, hand holding that person and leading that person through the membership journey. You have other people who have become members, but they are not volunteers. They're just there, they're watching, but there's no system to track, there's no system to show anything. You have people who have been volunteers, but they are not in leadership, and they've just been there for years. And then we're comfortable as leaders to have them as part of our membership without literally finding out why these people are not growing. So the church pipeline is about creating a culture of growth, discipleship, and empowerment, intentionally identifying, developing, and nurturing leaders, because the ministry cannot flourish if you don't have a growth pipeline, if people are not evolving into a better model of who they ought to be. So my next screen here just focuses on 4 key areas I'd like to touch base on when it comes to pipeline within the church. Now, I have the first one, member acquisition and retention. I have member engagement, tracking and insights. I have ministry growth and leadership development. I'm just going to run through this very quickly. Hopefully, we can get some insight from here. Okay, so talking about membership acquisition, how do we bring in members into the church? How do we acquire members? What systems do we have to ensure that members who are joining us are able, we're able to track them? Now, a lot of churches have developed their pipeline at some point, right? And they have created a lot of data collecting systems. So they have the Google Forms, they have the manual process, the paper process, they have Microsoft Forms, they have so many things, and these data sources are so disjointed, right? So you can't have a comprehensive conversation with the leadership of the church about what is going on with all these evangelism efforts we're having or we've had in the last 2 years. We can't analyze that data because some people wrote some things on paper. Some people wrote it, they use Google Forms. Now, the Google Forms, some people think, yeah, we're using technology, but where does that Google Form fit to? Where does it fit to? The highest a lot of people do is, export the Excel sheet and import into another system. Is that efficient? No, that's not efficient, right? So if you're creating a pipeline within your membership acquisition and retention process, and your data sources are disjointed, then you risk duplicating and mixing up member records. So we don't know, when we look at someone's name, we don't know, is she the one or is he the one? We're not even sure because this one has this surname, the other one has the same name, and then we're mixing things up. And we can't really tell when they joined the church. We can't really tell exactly, what they have, their journey through, the church. Then you also risk, member loss. When you're not able to track your members from the point of acquisition, they fall through the cracks. You can't track, where did I write the person's name? Or how do I remember the person I spoke to last week? Because there's no pipeline system, there's no pipeline management system to help us, just bring everything together and show us the journey from when they got into our ministry. And when there's no effective pipeline, follow-up becomes inconsistent. You can't track, when you called last, you can't track when you visited last. And if the person who is the primary contact of the visitor leaves the church, then the person has left with the contact of that guest. Automatically, you have lost that entire information. What if God sends that person to become the next transformational leader in your ministry, but you have just lost that person because the primary contact person has left, the information was on their phone, it wasn't passed on, or it was somewhere in some random sheet, and now we have nothing and we don't know what to do. Now, we also risk reputational issues around the reputation of our ministry. Because if I come to church with high expectations and make me feel good, make me feel happy, and then after my visit, nobody calls me, nobody visits me, nobody says anything, I'm just going to wonder, okay, was I just part of the statistics? Or what was this all about? Was it just, to boost somebody's reports and to make somebody look good on paper? Because what I'm saying happened to me. I went to a church and, the person who welcomed us, was all smiling and I felt so good. Oh, this is a nice place and all that. And then the very next week, I tried to say hi to this person. And then this person was looking at me that, do I know you? I'm like, what? Last week, you were almost hugging me. Now you're looking at me. Till today, the person does not recognize me. And I'm wondering, wow, how did we get here? Now, talking about membership tracking, membership engagement tracking and insight. Without an effective pipeline, you will not be able to engage your members properly. You cannot track to see how much work has gone on with each member. You can't track the history of visits, history of calls, welfare we've provided. You can't track all that because somebody said, and she said, they said, he said, but there's no record, there's no proof. So someone comes and says the church is not caring, but there's really no proof of how much the church has invested in their lives because there's no tracking. And when there's no tracking, there's no insight. So leaders cannot even understand, they can't what's it called now? They can't have a full oversight as to what is really going on within the ministry. And if they are communicating how they feel and sharing some information out there, it is likely that information is skewed because they have limited insights, limited knowledge on what is going on. When you don't have an effective pipeline, you cannot grow effectively. You can't measure your growth. You can't see, vertically and horizontally, how well are we doing? We set out this year to go by this number. This is how far we've gone. This is why we could not, grow this much. These are the weak areas. These are the areas of improvement. Now you can sort of know them manually, mentally, but when you can track consistent decline or when you can track trends, right, because you have data, it helps you to fine-tune your approach and you can go back to the drawing board and make amends where necessary. Disenfranchised members, you're trying to grow, but there are some people who are disenfranchised from the system because you can't really see who is getting onto the leadership platform, what they have learned or what they have not learned. So you are likely to leave some people behind and they are likely to feel disenfranchised because you can't track their learning journey, right? Now, if you can't do that, how do you mentor, people who are coming up, down the rungs of the ladder along the leadership, landscape? How do you measure what impact you're having on them? How do you measure the sort of mentorship you need to give them when you cannot track what's it called now, what school they have been through? School of ministry now, what programs they've been exposed to, what experience, Christian experience they've had. If you have a very large church, this becomes very difficult because you now have to bank on, just using idea and what you can see, maybe their fervency in quotes, and of course, without a proper pipeline, how do you effectively delegate to people who are, rising up the leadership scale? And I think this is my second to the last slide. When you don't have an effective pipeline that gives you visibility, leadership becomes reactive. I mean, you are not proactive, you are not taking decisions from the point of understanding, from the point of looking at the dashboard to see, what is really going on. You're just having the knee-jerk reaction. Okay, let's do this, let's do that. Something happened. Okay, let's quickly address it. But the root cause, if you had, some management pipeline, you would see the trend and you can monitor and say, okay, something is not quite right here. We need to nip this in the bud. And of course, you can get things done faster. When you don't have an effective pipeline, you are not able to get full feedback from all the stakeholders within the ministry because there's no system for them to give you that feedback. And trust me, some people are not going to walk up to you and say, oh, pastor, this is what I think and all that. But when you have a pipeline, effective pipeline system, you can, gather feedback from all the key stakeholders within the ministry and make a lot of, change as you go along. Again, without clear processes, without mapping the growth pipeline within your ministry, you are sending a wrong message of exactly what it takes to become a leader. And that level of inconsistency might affect, people retention within your ministry because they don't understand what is going on here. There's no clear pipeline. Things are done haphazardly. So I can't really predict that, oh, if I do X, Y, Z, this is the outcome I'm going to get. And by the time you have those challenges, you can imagine that you have challenges with succession planning and bringing people up to replace leaders who are exiting the leadership role. My last slide here just talks about quick wins, and that is, what do you do from here? Pastor Ben is going to touch more on that, but this is just a quick overview. First thing you want to do to evaluate the pipeline gaps that you have. What are your current constraints? What are the challenges? Let's face it. Let's look ourselves in the mirror. Then you have to define your pipeline strategy for new converts, for evangelism, for this, for that, for existing people within the church, within the ministry. How do they grow? What's the highest point? How do you develop them? You have to define it. It can't be just, oh, I think they know. No, it has to be clear. They have to know. You have to define the strategy on paper, and then, of course, streamline those processes so that it's easy. People can understand it and quickly get on board. Then the next level is automation. You can't get into automation or bringing the software into your system if you haven't even defined the strategy. So you find the right software like Church ERP, as we have here today, automate your streamlined pipeline process. And then, of course, over time, you evaluate and then evolve as you go, making changes where necessary. This is all from me. Thank you very much. I trust that the other speakers do justice to the other areas of the pipeline. And at the end of today, we'll be able to, leave this meeting with concrete, insightful action points for us to transform our ministries. Thank you very much, and God bless you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Wow, that was such a presentation.